Well, those zombies, how we doing? It's 1:19 in the afternoon on a Tuesday, the 30th of September 2025. A very frustrated and insecure Weaver Genesee Roseman, California, who's just seen the declaration of martial law indirectly as the orders were given to the commanders of our armed forces. I know this is probably wrong for me to say it, that we are looking at an incident, a situation here that goes beyond anything and everything that we held dearly to. And right now, I don't know what the hell to think about all this damn insanity. It's not being just sick to my stomach. It's seeing our country torn apart. We've made films about Civil War. We've made, recently in this decade, of that kind of warring. We've got films concerning about 1860 in various forms. But a reality check. Reality check, I think we're all fucked. When the Commander-in-Chief and the Department of Defense wants the military to break posse comitatus, a law that was sent, the law was created well after the Civil War, of preventing soldiers from entering homes and using them as battlegrounds, or them being used as police agents. It's why we have our local law enforcement and state militias, but they're duly represented enforcement officers of the court, of both federal, state, and local, that they would have the power to necessarily enforce laws, rules, regulations, all that shit. But it's not up to the military, not up to the National Guard, and sure as hell not to the regular military that we've got. I've been seeing the clips through the corporate. Because if I saw the regular one, I think I would have a conniption fit or a nervous breakdown. So I'd watched what these guys were talking about, and I know the military's sick of it. They're holding in their disgust. They're holding in their bile. They didn't want to throw up in front of the president, but one was doing a verbal barf out on this one. To have the Secretary of Defense and the President wanting to use our cities as a training ground for other countries. No, not for them. For us to invade their other countries.
I have never heard of, I spent a lot of time in government and even more time now watching and covering government and national security, and I've never heard a Secretary of Defense boast about violence of the men and women of the American military. What did you hear there?
I heard a person who really, frankly, shouldn't be in the job he's in. He was lecturing this group of generals and admirals and senior NCOs like a drill sergeant does about things that they don't need to be lectured about. We have an incredibly professional military. They don't need to be lectured to by Pete Hegseth about the sort of things he was talking about. He has emphasized violence and lethality from day one. American military behaves with principles and under sets of values under the rule of law. And everybody in that room knows that, and they're very proud of that. So the tone that he set and the imaginary woke military he described, which does not and never has existed, it was a bunch of nonsense. And again, everybody in the room understood that. This was a very embarrassing thing for the administration to do and for anybody to do in front of our officers.
I mean, General Anderson, Hegseth is on Trump's radar because he champions Donald Trump intervening in the military justice system. He champions Trump intervening to essentially override then Secretary of Defense Mark Esper's wish for the military system of adjudicating alleged war crimes to work and for Donald Trump to leave that alone and to honor it. And it's about, at least one of the individuals is accused of carrying out war crimes. That's how Pete Hegseth was first on Trump's radar, because he championed those individuals as a Fox News weekend morning co-anchor. I saw that legacy in this room today. How do the men and women of the military feel about that legacy?
Well, I can tell you, Nicole, there are probably 700 of the 800 gathered in that audience today walked out of that meeting shaking their heads saying, I flew 8,000 miles to hear that. I mean, as Secretary Kendall said, I mean, it was just an absolutely abysmal, sad state of affairs to have to sit through that and listen to that disaster of a speech. But, I mean, a couple things that really, I think, pointed out to me. First of all, did you notice that President Trump showed up late? He was 26 minutes late. I mean, that's a meeting that we've known about for at least a week. You know, he couldn't even be there on time. The second thing is, he wasn't there for Secretary Hegseth's comments. You know, it shows how insecure he is that he can't even sit through, you know, his own secretary's speech. You know, he's a much more compelling personal speaker than Donald Trump, and I think that probably came to play. But I mean, it's sad. You know, again, they know that they're being used politically as a pawn in this attempt to retain political power, and I think that they're all walked away very, very disgusted by what they saw. They're very upset with denigration of so many members of the military, you know, removing the guardrails for protections against harassment and discrimination, by denigrating minorities, women, you know, people of other sexual preferences, other religions. I mean, he called out Christianity a couple of times. I mean, this is not who we are. We are Americans, and our military is meant to represent all of us out there. We cannot turn back the clock 100 years to make the world run by a bunch of old, rich white guys.
Amy, I am thinking about Priya's reporting that, you know, the extension of this is to purge women from combat. The extension of this is not to elevate qualified senior leaders of color because they're so insecure and fearful of this boogeyman that they've created for themselves in DEI. I mean, they are moving the military into, seem to be intent on depriving it of its central strength, which is that it is a reflection of the country it serves around the world, the nation it protects, the values it projects and protects, or at least has through its history. This feels like a tectonic moment and a full mask-off reveal from Trump and Hegseth.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting, and all of this, at least from Secretary Hegseth, coming from a man, if you remember, who texted classified military operational secrets to his buddies, lecturing generals and admirals about professionalism and standards. But to your point, Nicole, particularly about women in the military, it's about talent. That's what it comes down to. You want the best talent that America has to offer in the military, and it is not hard, it's not easy to be in the military, okay? Not everyone is qualified. And so to single out minorities or women as somehow unqualified in this, I hate to say it, BS rant about women and standards that Pete Hegseth has had going on for a long time now is an insult to every woman who has served and met combat standards that have always, and let me be clear, always been equal for combat jobs. And he continues to lie about this. It shows how hollow and insecure he is, and the fact that he is so unrespected as a leader here. It's just, to me, as someone who served, as a woman who served, it's really embarrassing to see.
You know what's interesting to me as you're speaking, Amy, is he was talking about haircuts, but he didn't say anything about character. And this was his character. This is what created to Pete Hegseth, I think, being the first ever Secretary of Defense who was confirmed with opposition from both parties. Donald Trump couldn't keep his own party in line. He was credibly accused of rape, an incident that was investigated by the Monterey, California Police Department. He is a self-described person who drank. He promised Megyn Kelly on her podcast that he, quote, wouldn't do that anymore. And he's been described by Mr. Ouliot, who was a MAG person in good standing in MAGA, for running a very unstable and inconsistent operation, if you will. I'm being as generous as I possibly can because I don't have that article in front of me. It was penned in Politico in the first months of his term there. He's also described by insiders as being so paranoid as to be purging his own loyalists on a near weekly basis. And he's asked the members of the media, including right-wing media, to sign an oath saying they won't print anything unless it comes from the government, which is how they do things in North Korea. What do you think of the absence of any discussion of character?
There was a huge absence.
If you're asking me, Nicole,
I want to hear from all of you. Let me go back down. I'll start with you, Amy.
Well, look, since the moment I raised my right hand, I was 18 years old, swore an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States in Tecumseh Court in Annapolis, Maryland. All I was trained on were things like character and honor. That was like what is seeped in you as someone in the military. And Pete Hegseth, I've said this before, doesn't have those qualities, okay? And he is now leading a force that really prides itself on those things. And I think that's really important. The other thing you didn't hear in the speech, which I also think is really important, is there is no coherent foreign policy, no coherent defense policy in this speech. It was all a bunch of lies, politicization of the military, and frankly, BS craziness. And that also probably left 700 of the 800, as was stated earlier, generals and admirals leaving, having to scratch their heads like, wow, who do we have leading us?
Secretary Kendall.
There was an absence of discussion of character, and as Amy indicated, foreign policy. There was no discussion of China as a threat. There was a great deal of discussion of domestic threats and supposedly the radical left and invasion by immigrants. This was a speech, both of these speeches, I think, were deeply embarrassing, and they both created imaginary enemies to deal with, and they both were full of untruths, and people in the audience all knew that. I think both of these speeches, quite frankly, were as intended for the political base as they were for the officers in the room.
I mean, is it posse comitatus preclude the military from being used? I mean, isn't that, forget all of the disgrace that this was, isn't it also illegal and unconstitutional, General Anderson?
Absolutely. 1870, it was passed that law, posse comitatus. It does not allow military to be used as a police force. So they're violating the law by deploying soldiers like this. And so, Secretary Kendall and Amy were spot on target. I mean, this was an absolute embarrassing chapter. I mean, I think back to 1935 when Hitler called in the Wehrmacht and essentially gave him a dressing down and said, get on board or you're going to be gone or you're going to be shot. And we're almost to that point now. It's just so sad where our country is going right now. And Americans have got to stand up for this, against this. This is an absolute embarrassing. I mean, the Secretary of Defense, as Secretary Kendall pointed out, works at the strategic level, okay? This was not a strategic level speech. This was a tactical level. We're talking about haircuts, as Amy said earlier. We have some major threats with Russia, ongoing war in Ukraine, of course, all the issues ongoing in Gaza. You got a Chinese threat menacing out there. That's what the national security strategy should be focused on. That's what the Secretary of Defense should be focused on, not on haircuts and fat soldiers.
I want to ask all of you to just weigh in on what happens if this absolute drenching of the most senior members, the actual people who make up the most senior ranks of the military in politics, deeply polarizing politics. Trump's approval rating is somewhere between 36 and 39% in every poll I was able to find this week, what that does to the men and women of the military at lower levels. I have to sneak in a quick break. We'll have that conversation on the other side. Senator Tammy Duckworth will join us as well. Quick break. We'll all be right back.
My 2 cents? Fuck. We have so much discomfort, disharmony, and discontinuity happening with the military right now because we have a commander-in-chief and a Secretary of Defense that don't know their ass from a hot rock. And the SecDef is from Fox News. If he had served military, he wasn't showing it. Just showing to be a big bully. It's one thing if I'm going to be gathering that much military experience in front of me. And if I was going to be a Secretary of Defense at that point, I would tell these guys, you guys represent accumulation of millenniums of years of experience in military history, of experiences rolled around. You guys know your jobs, you guys know your people, you know how to lead them. I don't have to do this. I didn't want to do this. I got a commander-in-chief who's got a different opinion, who's never been in the military. But it's not a requirement in the Constitution for us to be that way. It's not. It's never been written in there that we had to have military experience to be the commander-in-chief. It has never been put into an amendment. Nothing. Some people felt maybe they should have. But we had commander-in-chiefs that made mistakes, but we've had them depend upon the military experience around them to make that decision. And the trust that they would build upon each other on that one. Trump's not in for it. He's only in for his own damn ego. And so is everybody else, including the Secretary of Defense and every other damn cabinet member or non-cabinet member in there. They're there for their own damn ego. It's insane, yes. It's illogical, yes. And I don't know what else we're supposed to be doing at this point. Tell you the truth, I don't know. It rattles my cage right now that we are in a situation that we have no clue what the hell we're supposed to be doing next. We're supposed to be depending upon our commanding generals to give us military advice on what we need. But when it comes down for civilian oversight, and we don't have it here right now in this current administration that we voted in November 2024. We voted in a tyranny. We drank the Kool-Aid. Now we got to deal with it. So is the rest of the world. And I'm not going to let you guys live it down. So now we have to deal with a military who's being threatened by the Commander-in-Chief and Department of Defense of unleashing our military forces against civilians. Here comes
Senator Amy McGrath. Let me put up some numbers just to put this in the context of the data that we have right now. According to New York Times Siena, which is more concerning to you? Americans were asked crime spiraling out of control if the National Guard isn't involved, 42%, or that Trump will use the National Guard to intimidate opponents, 51%. So now you've got 51% of the American people are scared of not active duty troops, but National Guard, who they're used to seeing in times of natural disasters, hurricane relief, storm relief, floods. You have 51% of Americans who are afraid of them, that they're being used by Donald Trump to intimidate Donald Trump's political enemies. Someone he described today, I believe for the first time, as, quote, leading an invasion. What happens to the men and women of the military who, at least in the National Guard, are often from or adjacent to the communities they're asked to protect, Secretary Kendall?
Yeah, our military, first of all, as you said earlier, is composed of very professional people. Character is emphasized. You've got 3 academy graduates on your panel here, different academies, but character and leadership, so leading with character has been beaten into all of this over and over and over. The same is true, I think, of the National Guard. They are a little different in that they're units which are very associated with their locales, with their states in particular, but also with where they happen to be in the state. What's been done so far is to take people from other states and bring them to a place like Washington to be used. In Oregon, I think they're going to call up some of the Oregon National Guard, so it's been a mix. I think these people are fairly professional. They don't have as much experience as people who are on active duty, serving on active duty, but they've had that experience in most cases historically. I do think, however, that this administration is trying to set the groundwork for using military force in America against American citizens, and I think it's a very dangerous time. They're also working to bring people that they consider to be political loyalists into positions of leadership. The numbers of firings of senior generals in the military is extraordinary. I've never seen anything remotely like that before. Generals are occasionally relieved for cause because they did something wrong. I have never seen them relieved because of perceived loyalty before. So there's a fair amount of time available to this administration to put the people that they feel like are loyal into positions. And you see similar things happening other places in the administration. As was mentioned by, I think, General Anderson, when the Trump administration came in the first time, a lot of career people like Jim Mattis came in senior positions. You don't have that this time. So I think there is a real concern about how much the military will be politicized, given that there are 3.5 years to try to identify loyalists and put them into positions.
I want to be really specific here because I think when we talk about loyalty, we talk about the Republican members of Congress who have pledged loyalty to a MAGA agenda. It is an entirely different thing in the military. Mark Esper was a lifelong Republican who led the Pentagon. He is deemed as disloyal. Mark Milley had no political association, was in combat for our country. He is deemed disloyal. General Kelly, he and his family have given more to this country and the military than anyone can. His own son lost his life in Afghanistan. He is deemed disloyal. He would not pass Donald Trump's loyalty test. John McCain was described this way by Donald Trump, quote, "I like the ones that aren't shot down." Lifelong Republican, he was the Republican Party standard bearer. So when we talk about loyalty in the context of the military, it has nothing to do with liking his picks for the Supreme Court. It has to do with something much deeper and much darker. And I want to ask all of you if you think it extends to carrying out orders that are illegal. General Anderson.
It does not extend to carrying out illegal orders, and you know, our loyalty is to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That's the oath that we took. Our loyalty extends to the Constitution. Donald Trump expects loyalty to him. Look at his cabinet. Look at the people he's surrounding himself with. Competence means nothing. Expertise means nothing. Experience means nothing. Loyalty is everything. And so what he's going to try to do is try to get loyal people in the military so he can execute his will. I mean, one of the things I'm really concerned about long term, I mean, we're 6 months into this. A couple of years from now, we could be talking about the Insurrection Act. And in order to do the Insurrection Act, Donald Trump is going to need to have a loyal military behind him. That's what he's trying to do. He's trying to set conditions so that he can utilize the military to consolidate his political power.
Let me bring into our coverage Senator Tammy Duckworth of Illinois. She's a former U.S. Army helicopter pilot and a Purple Heart recipient. Senator Duckworth, thank you for being here. Let me get your reaction to what you saw and heard today, and then I want to play you a little bit more of Trump's speech.
Qualified Secretary of Defense in our nation's history, accompanied by a 5-time draft dodging convicted felon in the Commander-in-Chief, address a whole bunch of generals and admirals in political theater. He's trying to turn them into political props, and frankly, it was unbecoming at the Secretary of Defense, and it certainly was a misuse and abuse of our military. But that's what they've been doing all along since they have taken office these last 9 months.
Senator, what exists in the system where the chain of command is what sort of governs the military, and the loyalty test we're talking about has nothing to do or isn't exclusively about who someone voted for. It's about their willingness to do what is asked of them. What exists in the system in terms of oversight or protections for the military?
Is what HECSEF is trying to dismantle. He's trying to dismantle the inspector generals. He's trying to dismantle the JAG officers. He's trying to get rid of the rules of engagement. These are all the safeguards that exist within our military to make sure that our military men and women execute themselves with the highest levels of professional standards and don't get crossways of the Constitution. That said, we have a professional military. We have men and women who have the highest ethical standards, and we have to rely on them to follow their oath of office, which is not to carry out unlawful orders. That said, we in Congress need to make sure that we hold this president accountable when they abuse the military, and we need to certainly pursue judicial solutions to this. You saw that they lost the court case about sending troops into Los Angeles, for example. So while they continue to try to dismantle the safeguards that exist in the military, we also have to trust in the military men and women and their professionalism, and I trust in them implicitly.
Let me show you what Donald Trump said about using the military in what sounded like an indefinite amount of time here in America.
What's so far?
Last month I signed an executive order to provide training for a quick reaction force that can help quell civil disturbances. So this is going to be a big thing for the people in this room because it's the enemy from within, and we have to handle it before it gets out of control.
He wants a fucking
And
war.
let me just ask you to contrast that with, this is news breaking since we've been on the air. The military is not a law enforcement agency, but this is what Trump did with law enforcement. The Department of Homeland Security cut $187 million, or 86% of Homeland Security funding to New York State, which will radically defund the police, NYPD, FDNY, and New York State police terrorism programs. They are defunding police programs and moving the military in as law enforcement. What can be done to stop that? It sounds like it is the wrong mission for the wrong agency, but he's also dismantling law enforcement.
He wants martial law.
That were appropriated for law enforcement support, everything from supporting police officers and departments to violence prevention and child protective services. If Donald Trump truly cared about crime, he would put that money back to where Congress intended, which was to support law enforcement across the country. He would work with local law enforcement to make sure that you address crime in our cities. But in fact, that's not what he's trying to do. He's actually just trying to normalize having armed troops in the streets of our nation in time for the election next November, not this coming November, but November of 2026, so that he can once again attempt to steal another election. And frankly, we're not going to let that happen. We can't. Our troops did not sign up to be on the streets to intimidate their neighbors. They signed up to protect Americans, to defend the Constitution, to fight our enemies overseas. They did not sign up to turn their weapons on their fellow Americans. This is going to affect the readiness of our military. We're not going to be able to respond to threats from overseas, and I think it's going to significantly affect recruitment. Americans are not going to want to sign up to join a military that is spending its time on the streets of our city harassing their fellow citizens.
You said you're not going to let them. How are you going to stop them?
Well, we as Democrats are doing a number of things. I mentioned that we are suing them in courts. We won the court case in California to show that that was an illegal maneuver to send troops into California. We are going to, you see our Democratic governors refusing to activate our National Guard. The irony is, if, for example, governors of red states like Governor Abbott in Texas, if he truly wants to fight crime, maybe he should send Texas National Guard to a city in Texas that has higher crime rates than Chicago. But that said, we need to hold them accountable.
Senator, thank you so much for I believe the rates in some of those Texas cities are higher than the crime rates, and not with the same trajectory as some of the other cities that have been targeted. Senator Duckworth, thank you so much for watching and being here to talk about today's news with us. We're really grateful.
Thank you.